Hi friends, I've been on a plethora of iPhone photo walks recently and I want to tell you about those. The iPhone, for a while, is going to become a more prominent part of my life because I broke my main camera. So I don't know if you guys remember a little incident I had recently with this camera, the one I'm filming with right now, when I dropped it on the pavement while getting out of the car. Well, a very similar incident happened with this camera and my other main photo camera. Luckily, no harm came to this one, and I thought that my full-frame DSLR, which is well built and weatherproofed, could withstand the blow. I've dropped it many times. I don't tend to worry about it. Well, this time, tragedy occurred, and I cannot get that camera to autofocus anymore. I don't know exactly what's wrong with it. I'm still figuring out the problem, but it appears to be broken. And this is bad. The bad side of that is that I can't shoot with that camera right now. The good side of that is it gave me an excuse to shoot more with my iPhone, which is not the worst thing that could have happened. So I've been leaning into that. I've honestly been enjoying it. There is a beautiful simplicity and unique creativity that comes with shooting with an iPhone. And I've been really enjoying this well-rounded photo editing app called Darkroom on my iPhone, which allows me to shoot, edit, and share my photos from this. It never leaves this. And it's neat and fun. Okay, on to the photo walks. I first went to the Salt Lake City Public Library. And I've been to this building before, and it is a beautiful work of art. It has 517,612 panes of glass in it, or something like that. Things I love about shooting at this library is there are a lot of vantage points to shoot from, down on things, up on things, parallel to things. You feel like you're working in 3D space. It's fantastic. There's a lot of beautiful light flying around due to all of the windows, aesthetically pleasing geometry, textures, and of course, people. It's a near perfect place to shoot street photography. One photo I felt good about was one of an interesting guy sitting down reading a California road map book. I like the dynamic of this guy sitting in a bright blue chair with his legs crossed, reading a large red book that says California on it. In the background you have these art pieces made of glass hanging down, green and yellow, makes for an interesting background. One of my favorite things about shooting with an iPhone is you feel, and in fact are, much less intrusive upon the environment that you're wandering around. And I prefer to not be seen as much as possible. Now, unless this guy was particularly infatuated with the urban road grid layout of Sacramento, I think he would have seen me if I was shooting with the DSLR. In this case, I went unnoticed. Here's another one I grabbed of an interesting fellow sitting down with his legs crossed, looking through books. And this is another example of me going unnoticed. I hovered around for quite a bit, and there was no shutter sound from, from my phone. It's a library, so it's very quiet. And I just sort of let him do his thing and let him go undisturbed. And it allowed me to play around with the photo and see what would come out of it. I like his expression, and I'll shoot in little bursts to try to capture the most interesting gesture I can find. I like his white shirt here. It really helps separate him and make him pop off of the shadowy background. Obviously he has a darker skin tone, but if he had a darker shirt on, he would have faded in. A lot of times with a scene like this where it's backlit, you're gonna need something to help you along to create separation and put interest on the subject of the photo as opposed to the window in the background. And this is my favorite photo from the library that day. There is a giant ball swarm of flying books with wings hanging from the ceiling in the main lobby of the library. It's a very intriguing element to hover around and frame up around, and in this case I was waiting for somebody to come up that stairwell into that light, and it was this guy, and it worked out really well. There's a lot of pre-visualization that goes on for me in framing up a photo. There's a vague idea in my head of what I want. It's not going to be exactly that, but I set up for it being some version of that, and whatever serendipity comes into the scene, that's what I use. When I say serendipity in this context, I mean the right person or the right set of events coming together at once. There are a lot of things that would happen that I wouldn't consider serendipity in this context, one being a person that isn't quite what I want for the photo. So the order of things is sort of like show up to the location, pre-visualize, wait patiently, keep waiting patiently, continue to wait patiently, and if you're lucky, you might get a photo. But one of the conundrums I face is if I get somebody who is serendipitous, who is interesting, but I feel like I could do better, right? So I have a keeper over here. I'm gonna stash this away. That's good. I'll see what I can do with that. That might work. But there may be something better. And so when do I leave? How long do I hold out for something closer to the ideal? There's no perfect answer to this question because you could stand there for 45 minutes, leave, and then a second later, a person with a giraffe head walks by, and it would have been the shot that you dreamed of in your wildest nightmares. So for me, a frequent strategy is to set some sort of timer in my head, and sometimes that timer means, oh, it's 2:40 right now, I'm going to wait until 2:45 and then I'm out of here. One reason that works well is because you're setting a goal of time to wait towards, as opposed to just feeling like you're standing there forever and nothing's happening. There's a distinction there. Okay, now I want to move on to a photo walk that I went on downtown. It was a beautiful early summer's day. So I wandered around, and at one point I found myself in the food court of the mall. And I went to the upper level to look down on all of the people eating. I like to do this from time to time. I grabbed a couple different shots. There was one scene that I found interesting, and it was a father and a son sitting down eating, and there was a streak of light that they were sitting in. I was intrigued by the interactions that the father and son were having. Some of it was playful, but the son kept leaning over to lean on and sort of hug the father for a couple of seconds. The son would do this repeatedly, so it gave me some time to hover around and find a decent angle. And at one point, the father was leaning on his hands, like you see in the photo, and he just had a very contemplative energy to him. He seemed like somebody who would think a lot, and I thought that was interesting. So I got that and the son hugging him at the same time. Made for an interesting shot. I then made my way away from the food court to an escalator. It's actually one of my favorite escalators because it's very long and I have a nice vantage point pointing down on it as people go up and down. There wasn't too much foot traffic, so it took some patience, but I happened to capture a shot of what I assume is a father and his two daughters going downward. I definitely want to come back to that escalator frequently because there's a lot of opportunity there. At one point I was walking around and I came across a guy sitting on his balcony with his shirt off, and I was interested in using him as the subject. Now, given that I was shooting with my iPhone, and luckily it has a 50mm lens, but I had to choose between a little bit tighter of a shot with my 50 or a wider shot where he's much smaller in the frame. I had to figure out how to make that work. Now, what could have been interesting is if I had a camera, a long lens, and I was either parallel to his height or above him pointing down. I could have created something interesting there. But in this case, I was on the ground and I decided a wide angle lens was the way to go because the building was very interesting. So I decided to work that into the frame and let him be small, but also be a prominent part of the photo in terms of interest. My theory about this photo is that even though it is an interesting building architecturally and geometrically, it's still just a building. So when you put a human element into the photo and they're properly lit and placed thoughtfully, they will take over the photo to some extent. The If he was maybe higher up the tower, that could have created some serious challenges, but he's on a floor that's actually separated a little bit more from all the floors above him. I think having him in the shot makes the entire scene more interesting and also provides for a sense of scale, him being compared to the size of this building. So I'm always trying to strategically find a proper interplay between the background and this foreground and the subject and foreground elements that can be used as a framing mechanism, and what the light is doing, and what all of the geometric shapes are doing and how they're playing off of each other, and is there enough contrast, so on and so forth. My wife's calling. Hello? Hi. Hey, Christina.
Hey, James.
What do you think about me being confined to shooting with my iPhone?
I'm excited. I think some of your best photos actually work from your iPhone. So, especially that one that you took of me in the waterfall.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get to that one in a second, guys. I'd say my favorite photo from this photo walk is this one. This is taken in a little alley plaza area, and you see the backside of a bunch of these buildings that are very aesthetically interesting. Tons of gorgeous geometry and colors flying around. You have the big glass building, which I mentioned in my last photo walk video that I love so much. And then in the foreground you have these older buildings, and you have this red garage door where I have the person walking in front of in this case. I also love this huge gnarly Gotham City-esque smokestack we have in the background, and my angle pointing up creates a lot of drama in the photo. If we dig into this photo, we see a lot of intriguing patterns. On the building on the left, we see these fire escapes going up the side of the building, repeating. On the right side of that building, we have these single windows going up the side. If we look in the middle, we have these pairings of 3 windows going up. If we move down and towards the center of the frame, just to the left of the red door that the person's walking in front of, we have these brick formations that make these rectangles that repeat. On the right side, we have these tall rectangular windows that repeat. And if we move up to the big glass building in the background, we have this sort of dark window, light stripe, dark window pattern going on. And my favorite pairing are these little lights that are on top of the building right in front of that building. It's a pair of 3 sets of spotlights that are in groups of 2 that have a wonderfully interesting look to them. And of course we have this little person in a perfect stride, perfectly placed in front of this red door, which contrasts against the blue sky. I think this person creates a sense of scale and elevates the interest of the entire photo. I absolutely love how this turned out. I definitely want to go back to this spot frequently. I see a lot of opportunity here, and I want to capture shots of people closer to the camera in the middle of the plaza and see what sort of combinations of subject and background I can come up with. So after downtown, I went on an attempted photo walk at the edge of the Salt Lake, and some problems emerged while I was there. There's this vast open distance that you have to walk from where you park to the edge of the water line. And on my way there, I captured this photo, or I guess I should say a burst of photos, of this guy who was running and making some interesting motions with his body. I didn't know what exactly was happening at that moment, but it was foreshadowing. That was the only decent photo I came away with, because when I made it close to the edge, there were thousands and thousands of little flies, little gnats that started attacking my legs and my body and eating my brains. This is very common around the Salt Lake if you come at just the wrong time. Me and my wife took a journey out to Antelope Island, which is a state park in the middle of the Salt Lake on an island, and we came during gnat time, and that was intense.
There were some people. Oh gosh! Ew! Oh my god!
I quickly realized that staying would be an absolute nightmare, and I wasn't sure where my flesh would end up. So I started running, and when I ran, they stopped flying around my legs a little bit. And then when I stopped, they started again. And then when I started, they stopped. And then when I stopped, they started again. This happened pretty consistently for about 80% of the run back to my car. So I got out of there. I did not want to have my organs eaten by gnats. Not again. Next, me and my wife made our way out to a waterfall that we had not visited before called Adams Canyon Lower Falls. Hi friends, me and the wife left the apartment, went on a little Sunday hike, and we're at a waterfall. Oh, and the doggo, getting some exercise for him. This is quaint. When we got down there were lots of little wasps flying, or stinging insects of some sort flying around. And this is common around streams around here. Luckily, they were just going about their day and they were much less irritating than the gnats previously mentioned.
Christina! Christina! Look out for flash floods! Look out for flash floods! Look out for flash!
Once again, of course, I had my iPhone, because if you do something adventurous and don't have a device to capture and or share that adventurous act, did it ever really happen at all?
Oh my God!
I'm so freaking happy with the photos I captured there. My wife was my subject, she is beautiful, and her contrasted against the dark background. It's a very shadowy scene, very cool scene, and I love that. That felt wonderful, and waterfalls can provide such a sense of drama to a scene. And I love that I was able to capture her underneath the waterfall and have it falling in front of her. Okay, that's it for this one. I don't think I've ever squeezed such a large amount and diversity of photo walks into one video. We really broke new ground here, guys. They said we couldn't do it. And then we didn't. We didn't try because we thought they're probably onto something. I mean, that's a pretty monumental task to take on, but over time, we overcame smaller challenges and, you know, went to the grocery store, got the correct amount of groceries, spent the right amount of money. We came back home. We, you know, made a friend. We built a birdhouse out of popsicle sticks. We installed a new spark plug in our Toyota Corolla. We kept a ficus alive. And then we said, hey, I'm ready to put a bunch of photo walks into one video. And then we tried, and then we failed. But then we tried again after we went to film school, and then we succeeded. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit the thingy, because that really does help. And if you want to support what I'm up to, check out my shop. I hope you have a lovely day. Goodbye.